Hello, college football fans. I'm Nick Carparelli, the executive director of Bowl Season, and welcome to this season's second episode of the Bowl Season Stories podcast. Last year, we recorded 21 episodes, hosted 57 guests, including college football player and coaching legends, members of the media, as well as bowl game executive directors, all sharing their favorite bowl season memories. Over the course of this college football season, we will record 20 episodes in all, and we have an exciting lineup of guests planned for you. Today, we are joined by former Baylor quarterback Nick Florence, Allstate Sugar Bowl Chief Executive Director Jeff Hundley, and the founder and CEO of Tailgreeter, Nick Akrap. 3 Nicks in one episode. Can't have enough of those. Our first guest today is brought to you by Sport Radar, reimagining immersive experiences for sports fans and bettors. He played quarterback at Baylor from 2009 to 2012 and broke 7 school records during his senior season on his way to being named honorable mention All-American. He capped off his college career with a win over UCLA in the 2012 Holiday Bowl and now serves as Associate Athletics Director for Major Gifts at his alma mater. Please welcome to the show, Nick Florence. Nick, thanks for joining us today.
Yeah, thanks for having me. This is fun. I get to relive the glory days a little bit.
Always good to do that. They tend to grow in stature over the years, but you don't need to embellish yours. I mean,
you've got to grow something as you get older. You get less and less athletic, so the story's got to get better.
Well, there you go. Well, you don't need to grow much. Your senior year, you threw for 4,309 yards, a single season record at Baylor, single game record against West Virginia, 581 yards. Looking back at your college career, how much did you enjoy the experience of playing college football in general and specifically playing at Baylor?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, it's a dream come true. And I still tell people, when they ask me about those days, it honestly feels like someone else's life because I'm like, I don't know how I ever did any of it. But man, it was a blast. It prepares you so much for life. I love the game of football, specifically in the team sport and the discipline and the hard work you have to learn to be successful at it. The reality is the guys that were around me, man, those attributes and those records or stats are pretty crazy to think about, but it was because of the team around me and the coaches I had just putting me in the best position to succeed. And so kudos goes to those guys, but man, it was fun. I still wish I were as athletic as I once used to think I was. But it's fun to talk and relive those days.
Of course. Well, I mean, you capped your career with a win over number 17 UCLA in the 2012 Holiday Bowl, 49-26. You threw for 2 touchdowns, rushed for another. You mentioned playing with your teammates. We talk about the bowl game experiences and how precious those are and how memorable they are. What was it like to take a great trip to San Diego as your last game, and how much fun was that trip?
Man, it was a blast. Honestly, leading up to that, we were, I think, 4-5 with 3 games remaining. And one of those games was Kansas State, who was number 1 in the nation at the time with Colin Klein, and they were coming to Waco. And so for us, we kind of had our backs against the wall and then went on a 3-game win streak, starting with that Kansas State win. And then beat Texas Tech and then Oklahoma State. And I remember even after the interview, as kids, you're always trying to figure out what bowl you're going to go to. And we're from Texas, and everyone's been to San Antonio. Everyone's been to Houston and Lake Seastrunk. I remember after our final home game against Oklahoma State, he tells the media, hey, we want to go to San Diego to the Holiday Bowl. And I'm like, hey, that's cool. Like in the back of my mind, I'm like, hey, that's great. Like, that's not a reality, man. Like they're not going to put us there. And lo and behold, we got to go out there. And, for us, and even for me, it was my first time in California and for so many of my teammates. And so it was a pretty special experience for us to get to do something different, because the previous 2 years were Houston and San Antonio. And those are great bowls in themselves, but to go to a Holiday Bowl in San Diego, California. And I mean, just a dream come true and so much fun. So
I think for me, one of the most interesting things you just said is you were 4-5 and you guys were really motivated to get to a bowl game, and you won your last 3 to not just get to a bowl game, but maybe 6-6 you'd have gone, I don't know, but 7-5 got you to the Holiday Bowl. That was great motivation there. There's so much focus on the playoff nowadays, which is awesome, right? We all love the playoff. Yeah. We need a mechanism to crown a national champion. But you and I know that the playoff, there's 130 FBS institutions, aspiring to be in the playoff every year is not for everyone, right? So we feel that the bowl season goes hand in hand with the playoff. The playoff is great.
Yeah.
But college football needs bowl season as well. So talk about that notion a little bit and how motivated you were to keep winning when at 4-5, you knew you weren't going to get into any kind of playoff or the BCS at the time.
Yeah, I mean, to be able to go spend a week in another town with your teammates and to get to play the game that you love and the memories that you make. I mean, I still think back to San Diego, and man, how fun of a place it was, how beautiful of a place it was, and for so many, it's like, man, we've never had that opportunity to go somewhere like that. And I actually had the opportunity to go back with my wife to San Diego this last spring, first time since the Holiday Bowl, and it was just wild to go relive some of those memories. But just the bonding, the camaraderie, the memories you leave with that game from. And, I even think your guys, like one of my most favorite stories, coaches are always trying to motivate their players, right? You got a bunch of 18 to 22-year-olds and trying to keep people relaxed, but motivate. And, we're all from Texas, the majority of us. And so we're playing UCLA in their backyard in California. It feels like a foreign land. There's palm trees everywhere. There's nice cars. And coach one day at practice, he's like, you know what, guys, this is about us, right? They can have their palm trees and their fast cars. But you know what we got? We got our oak trees and our mopeds, and just this like backs against the wall mentality. Hey, they're flash, but we're substance, right? And we kind of went in with that mentality of, hey, it doesn't matter who we're playing, where we're playing. We just won 3 games in a row, one against the number 1 team. Oklahoma State was ranked that last game too. So we were feeling pretty confident and playing our best football at the right time of year. So, man, we had a blast. It was fun to go in there, beautiful night, and really take it to the palm trees and fancy cars.
Awesome. Now, you mentioned earlier the Alamo Bowl and the Texas Bowl. You got to experience those games backing up Heisman Trophy winner Robert Griffin III. What did you learn from him while you were teammates?
Yeah, I mean, one, he's an incredible competitor. And I think there's so much in life that when you have a will and drive and hard work and you're a competitor, you can accomplish a lot of things. I knew very clearly I was not going to be Robert Griffin III. I'm much slower. I don't throw the ball as hard or as far. I'm just not as gifted athletically. But when you work hard and you have great people around you and you try to make the best of everyone else, things tend to go well. And I think that's one thing Griff did well is, man, he tried to put the ball in everyone else's hands. He tried to make the most of others. And so to be able to just kind of carry that and get the opportunity to follow in the footsteps of a guy like him, for me, it was fun. It was an opportunity, and that's all you can ask for in life. And so, to be able to hang over his head, I had more, single season passing yards is one thing I can hang over him. But no, he's an incredible athlete, and man, learned a lot. He did a lot for Baylor, so it was fun to be able to just carry that mantle.
And one of the cool things I think is you got to experience bowl games as a player. We've talked about that, but now you work at Baylor. You've been there since 2013, and the Bears have played in some pretty good bowl games recently. Last year, you guys beat Ole Miss in the Sugar Bowl.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure you go to those games. It's a different kind of feel for you as you're, working in the athletic department. You get to see, student athletes and the experiences they have. How much fun has bowl games been for everyone involved, kind of in your new position, and for you as well as how you observe the student athletes' experiences now?
Yeah, no, that's a really good question. Obviously, I think in life you always want to raise the bar, right? So like I want our ceiling to be the next class's floor, and you're constantly trying to achieve and now what we've been able to accomplish in the last few years under Matt Rule and now Dave Aranda. It's truly special. It's special for the players because having been one, I know what they're getting to experience. But even in my role in engaging donors and philanthropy for the university, I truly believe in what we're doing. And I believe our leadership and our donors believe in what we're doing, that it's more than winning. And for us, winning is the platform, and it's really about developing young people and through athletics, through sports. But I think one of even the coolest things, and this probably doesn't get talked about enough, even in sports channels, but one I'm passionate about is what sports does for the university. what it's done for Baylor, what Baylor football has done for the university as a whole. We're an R1 research institution now. Our brand is so much larger because of the success we have on the football field. And we're attracting students from all over the nation. And so that, to me, is what's fun, is we get to use the avenue of athletics, and specifically football, and engage our donors and our alumni and our parents and our fans to give back, that not only impacts our students, student athletes, but also students as a whole, because at the end of the day, our football players are getting degrees too. And we have football players in every part of the university, from engineering to business to the sciences. And that's ultimately what it's about, and why I'm so passionate about what I do. And the reality is football will end for everyone, and most people on not their terms. And so what are we doing to prepare these young people to go out and change the world? And so it's a blast, and to make the memories, and are fun to be able to do it that way.
Well, probably not a better person to be out selling that vision than you, someone who's lived it and has been given a lot of great things, as a result of Baylor.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So give us some examples of some of the great things you're working on right now. You're on the road as we speak, trying to raise money. Any cool projects coming up?
Yeah, no, we've got two actually extremely big projects. I like to joke with people, the more we have and the projects we're building, it's job security for me. So we're actually building a basketball pavilion. So Foster Pavilion will open in about 16 to 18 months. And so men's and women's basketball will house there. And then we're also building the Fudge Football Development Center. So I've gotten to work with that donor very closely, and building a new day-to-day headquarters for Baylor football, which will be a state-of-the-art facility. So both those projects are beginning to break ground, but we are still very much in the fundraising stages. And so it's fun for me, man. I truly believe in what we're doing, and a student athlete that comes to Baylor to play sports gets an experience you can't buy anywhere else, in developing the whole person, both physically, both on the field, mentally, but also spiritually in our Christian faith. And so it's a special place to me, man. It's fun, and to be able to not sit behind a computer screen punching numbers all day and talk about it. It's a dream come true.
Well, you're clearly passionate about what you do and where you do it, and I love to see that. There's nothing better than having a career that meets your passion. So I love that. Nick, we've taken enough of your time. You need to go raise some money. Thank you so much for visiting with us. You were great. Good luck to you, and hopefully I get to meet you in person down the road.
Absolutely. Thanks for the time, Nick, and it was a blast. Let's definitely meet in person.
Awesome. All right, well, we're going to take a short break and be right back with Allstate Sugar Bowl Chief Executive Director Jeff Hundley. Stay with us.
The forecast for this tax season? It's going to rain refunds. Lots of refunds. File for less and get more with TaxAct, the official tax filing software of bowl season. Go to taxact.com to get started today.
Welcome back to the show. Our next guest is brought to you by Tapit. Understand how going cashless builds loyalty, engages fans, and boosts your bottom line. We are now joined by Jeff Hundley, Chief Executive Director of the Allstate Sugar Bowl, and also the chair of the bowl season executive committee this year. So he's my boss, so I better not ask him too many tough questions. Jeff, thanks for joining us.
Great to be with you, Nick. Appreciate the time.
Now, you've been associated with the Sugar Bowl for almost 30 years now. It's hard to believe. I met you, I was thinking about it last night. I met you in 2002 when I first started at the Big East. So you had been with the Sugar Bowl roughly 10 years then. So it's been 20 years since we met. So 30 years. You've hosted 7 national championship games over that time. Time flies. Can you believe how much you've seen in the Sugar Bowl over those 30 years?
Yeah, the times have changed. To be honest with you, when I first started, that wasn't the plan. We moved to New Orleans from Athens, Georgia. I'd worked in the athletic department at Georgia for about 7 years prior to that, and the idea was to come to the bowl and get some experience and bounce back to a school, and wound up liking it, staying. So I started having a family and all that, and here we are 30 years later, and really happy with the decisions we've made. Been a lot of change, as you mentioned. During that time, I've lived, through the coalition, the alliance, the BCS, now into the CFP, and who knows what the next iteration of that's going to be right now. So it's it's been fun. It keeps you on point at all times, and I wouldn't trade it for anything, I guess.
Well, so many notable events over those 30 years. Probably the first one I want to bring up is Hurricane Katrina in 2005, 17 years ago this week. I remember it very well because at the end of that season, our champion, West Virginia, played Georgia in your game, and that was held in Atlanta. But obviously Katrina was way beyond football. It was a such a devastating event for your community. What do you remember about the tragedy and how it affected your community?
Oh, gosh, it's hard to put in a few words, but we had evacuated with another family in my neighborhood because we knew it was going to be a bad one and it was coming right at us. And we were in Jackson, Mississippi, and the storm had hit New Orleans, and had actually came right through Jackson as well. And one of the first things I remember is we were in a hotel where we had lost power, and somebody had hooked up an old black and white television to a car battery, and everybody was in the lobby of the hotel, was all people who had evacuated from the New Orleans area. And we're seeing these grainy black and white images of television showing flooding in the city, showing the top of the Superdome ripped off, and I remember turning to my wife and saying, "Baby, I don't know if I'm going to have a job after this." It was obvious that the dome was in no shape to host a game for that year. And so fast forward, things worked out. We explored all sorts of options, from having the game in all the way from Houston to Atlanta. Wound up with the help of the Southeastern Conference, putting the game on in Atlanta. It was very helpful that I knew a lot of people in the Atlanta and Georgia area from having, worked at the University of Georgia. Gary Stoken was certainly helpful in getting us connected with the right people. I remember Khalil Johnson, who was at the Georgia Dome, Carl Atkins, some good people that really, we packed up. Actually, let me back up a minute. When we decided we were going to Atlanta, we walked in to our offices to get our computers and our files. That was the first time we'd been in a month in the office. I had worked remotely from, we evacuated to Jackson, went to Montgomery, Alabama for a couple of days, wound up in Destin, Florida, and kind of made headquarters there and worked remotely. At that point in time, nobody knew how to text. That was when I learned how to text people, because it hadn't been used a lot, because there was all the cell service was down, so you couldn't communicate with anybody via phone. So we were texting people, and man, it was just all over the page. But when we came back into our office to pack up our computers and go to Atlanta, our offices had been ransacked. This was a place of last resort, the Dome was, and people were, I guess, looking for food or what have you. I tell this story frequently, but we had a table in this office that had two trophies sitting on it. One was the Sugar Bowl trophy, and one was the Manning Quarterback Award trophy, which we give out every year, the Sugar Bowl does. And we came in, and the people had smashed the Sugar Bowl trophy into a million little pieces. They had respect enough for the Manning family that they left it untouched there. So we found out where we stood. But anyway, we packed up and went to Atlanta, had to recreate. This was, by then it was October, early October. We lived in a hotel for, all the way through the game, and recreated the Sugar Bowl in Atlanta. Same number of events. We actually added a parade that we didn't do at the time in New Orleans, so we actually made it even harder on ourselves. But community really rallied and helped us, and it wound up being a great event. It was actually a good ball game. Georgia, it was helpful that Georgia was in the game as well. They sold the tickets, and as I recall, Rich Rodriguez was the West Virginia coach, and he called a fake punt, and that turned the game around, and West Virginia won by, I think it was 38-35 there in the Georgia Dome, and we all breathed a big sigh of relief after getting through that. And then when we were done, we couldn't get back to New Orleans because all our office was in a shambles, and all the office space had been scooped up. Any that was, usable had been scooped up because there was a lot that had been damaged. So we stayed in Atlanta another 3 months before we could find an temporary office space to get back to New Orleans. So it was there's more to it than all that I just shared there, but it was interesting times. It was probably the most stressed out I've ever been in my life, that period between October and the game, trying to get things done. But ultimately it came together, and the schools had a good experience, and we lived to fight another day.
Well, I can vouch firsthand that what a great event you put on there, Atlanta. It really it felt like you were in New Orleans. You kind of brought not just the game, but you brought the whole city of New Orleans feel and the events to Atlanta. And what a great job you guys did under pressure. I was so impressed by that then. Another memorable year was 2011-2012. Sugar Bowl hosted its first overtime game, Michigan against Virginia Tech. And then 6 days later, you put on the BCS national championship game between LSU and Alabama. Some people feel that was the biggest sporting event in the history of the South, which is saying something, mainly because those two passionate fan base just collided right there in New Orleans. What was that like 10 years ago?
It was pretty amazing. It was a special time here in the city. That Michigan started with the Michigan Virginia Tech game. We hadn't had Michigan here in quite a while, and we had a great history with Virginia Tech. We felt like we played a part in them. You'll recall, Nick, when they first hit the national scene, they came down here and played Texas and won a game back in the mid 90s, and they, really kind of exploded, and, it became a program to be reckoned with. But, having those two programs here, and then, believe that was the first ever overtime game, and remains the only overtime game ever played at the Sugar Bowl. And so it was a good ball game for that. And then, we had the BCS game 6 days later, but at the same time, that year, I was also serving as co-executive director of the NCAA Men's Final Four, which was just a few months later. And so we were working on the Final Four, we were working on the BCS, we were working on the Sugar Bowl. So my wife, she likes to forget that year because I wasn't home much at all. But it was a good year. The BCS game, it was bittersweet. Yes, it was probably one of the biggest sporting events, in the history of the South, certainly in the state of Louisiana. We had hundreds of thousands of people in town without tickets. It was just a super great vibe in the air. But, ultimately that led to the downfall of the BCS. There had been much that led up to that. There'd been a lot of, the guys that were writing death to the BCS, and a lot of media taking shots at the system and at bowl games in particular. But, while we enjoyed the spoils of that game, ultimately it brought that down. But it, glass half full, it brought on the CFP. And, that was where, the rest of the country decided that everybody needed to have a shot at playing for the national championship game, and not just leave it to computers to decide who the top two teams are to play in the BCS. And, I think the CFP has proved to be popular and has done well as a result. So we were part of that, but it was quite a year. And then, couldn't even rest after the game was over, because we jumped right after the men's Final Four and had a great event here. I think Kansas and won that year, or Kentucky. I know they were both in it. My memory fails me right now, but it was a good year all around.
Well, clearly you have a history of willingly adding to your workload. In fact, you have an exciting new offering for fans this weekend with the Allstate Louisiana kickoff. How do you and your staff approach these events and kind of try to tie them back to the great work you do during bowl season?
Yeah, it's really been, I'll be honest with you, Nick, as long as I've been doing this, it's been a bit of a learning curve for us, coming up, it's going well. We're excited about the matchup with LSU and Florida State Sunday night. We've got lucky with Brian Kelly, this being his first game. We've been working on this game, trying to pull it together since 2017. And now to see it come to fruition, we got the state of Louisiana is involved in a big way, hence the name, the Allstate Louisiana kickoff. And then again, we had some good fortune with Allstate, who's our sponsor on an annual basis for the Sugar Bowl game, but they were lined up to play a game. They had signed a 3-year deal in Dallas to do the kickoff game there. And Dallas had trouble this year putting together a matchup. And so we were able to convince Allstate to slide over and work with us on this game. So real positive because we know each other and what have you. But again, it doesn't have all the moving parts that a normal bowl week would have in terms of all the hospitality events. It's really a road game. We're doing a couple things extra. We got a big fan event on game day, and we're doing an event the night before the game as well. But it's been fun. It's I don't know that we'll be in the business to try and do one annually. We'll do it where it makes sense for us. And to be honest, having LSU in the equation took the risk out of it for us. And we knew we'd sell the tickets, and so we're expecting. The early lines show that it's expected to be a close ball game. So we hope that's what we get come Sunday night, and everybody has a good time and moves on down the road and has a great season.
Well, I'm looking forward to watching that one. Last question for you, Jeff. We talk a lot about bowl games in general and how meaningful those experiences are for the student athletes and the universities who participate in them, but they're also really, really important to the communities that host them. Your game obviously is at the top of that list. The Allstate Sugar Bowl is about a lot more than football. What are some of the highlights of the bowl's non-football activities in New Orleans?
Well, we've used over the years, Nick, as you know, we've used the platform that being, at the top of the bowl lineup has afforded us, so we've tried to be a good corporate citizen. And, we're involved in we've got scholarship programs for young people, both boys and girls heading off to college that through the National Football Foundation, as well as through Women in Sport. We do that. We're involved. We've been able to do some good things, through our partnership with the CFP. Very proud of what we've been able to do in the Extra Yard for Teachers program that the CFP set up. Since 2019, we've put more than $3 million into efforts to lift up the teaching profession in New Orleans. We've got the 3 R's: recruiting, recognizing, and retaining teachers. It's a very important mission for us and something that we're proud of. We're able to sponsor the state high school football championships. We do a whole calendar of other events during the year, all of which have a purpose in creating tourism and economic benefit for the city of New Orleans. And when special things happen, when COVID hit, we were able, because of our position and our good fortune over the years, we stepped up and donated $500,000 to out of work hospitality workers in the city, because this city, as you know, it thrives on hospitality and that industry. And all of a sudden we had nothing. And so the people in that business were hurting, and we were able to step up and help. And we've done that consistently over the years, whether it's, making donations to Tuscaloosa when there were tornadoes through there, that when there was a shooting on campus at Virginia Tech, we paid for counseling for students on campus. So, we very much, it's in our DNA to try and be just a good citizen here and throughout the college football community as well. And I'm sure that'll continue as we go forward.
Well, Jeff, thank you so much for being on the show. You said at the beginning that it wasn't your plan to be with the Sugar Bowl for 30 years. I for one, am very thankful and grateful that you have been. And I think I speak on behalf of everybody else in the world of college football that we're so happy that you're running the Sugar Bowl. You're an asset to bowl season, an asset to college football in general. And beyond that, you're just a great guy, and everybody who knows you thinks that. So thanks so much for everything you do, Jeff.
Well, thanks, Nick. I'd be remiss if I didn't congratulate you too, because the bowl season has quickly become a brand that's identified and to be reckoned with in the future. I'm proud to be a small part of it, but your vision for this has been great, and it's something that I know we're just going to build on in the future, and I'm excited about that opportunity.
Excellent. Me too. Thanks again, Jeff. Good luck this weekend.
Great. Thanks.
Take care. We are now joined by the founder of Tailgreeter and its CEO, Nick Akrap. Each week, we talk about the great traditions of college football and bowl season specifically, but tailgating, I think, is just as big of a tradition as college football itself. And the two really go hand in hand. You're sort of an expert on this subject, Nick. What is it about tailgating that makes everyone love it so much?
I think it's just become the overall game day experience. I've been to tailgates all over the country, and to see the different fascinating people and traditions different in every conference and every region, the food, the drinks, the activations, the way people just interact with each other. It's got to be the most welcoming place in the world. I'd love to tell the story of a tailgate down in Alabama where 100 years they've been in the same parking lot. Their recipes passed down from generation to generation, still serving great grandma's punch. So I think as long as football's been around, so is tailgating.
So I love stories where people find their passion and they make a career out of it. There's nothing better than working around something that you love doing. So you and your brother Mirko founded Tailgreeter roughly 4 years ago. Other than the obvious, where did this idea come from?
Yeah, so it's somewhat selfishly, right? We wanted to tailgate ourselves and experience more stadiums and more locations and meet more people, and just found that it was so difficult to figure out where the best place to park was. If you're traveling, it becomes so difficult to travel with your setup with grills and coolers and everything else. So when we started thinking about how we could possibly solve a problem like that, it was like, well, we should just ask the people who are season ticket holders and the people who are tailgating every week in, week out, would they be welcoming if me and a group of friends were to join them? And that's kind of the origin story, if you will. So Tailgreeter is a digital marketplace where we found a whole bunch of tailgate hosts, and then people that want to tailgate but don't necessarily have the means or the access to do it themselves. So we are the digital platform in the middle, connecting one to the other.
So tell me a little bit more. You guys handle everything. What does a fan, at a bowl game, for example, have to do to work with you guys, and what can you deliver to them?
Yeah, for a fan, it's as easy as logging on and checking out the listing. Very similar to Airbnb, the whole user experience. You go on and you can download the app, take a look at what kind of things are being offered at any specific bowl game, and then you pay per person and show up on the day of. We handle the setup, the cleanup, getting all the logistics in place. So for a fan, it's as easy as buying a ticket to the game.
That sounds like a great idea to me. I wish I thought of it. So before we wrap up, tell the listeners, how can they find you? Where should they go to look?
Sure. On all social media. So Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok, you can find us at Tailgreeter, and then tailgreeter.com, or download the Tailgreeter app straight from the Apple or Android store. The iOS or the Google Play Store.
Awesome. You're great, Nick. Thanks so much for joining us on the show. Hopefully we'll be able to tailgate together sometime this year, bowl season for sure, if not sooner.
Can't wait, man.
Awesome.
Thank you again for the opportunity.
You're welcome. Thanks for joining us. And thanks to all of you for listening to this week's Bowl Season Stories podcast. Please join us next week when we will welcome another lineup of great guests. If you like the show, we'd appreciate you dropping a 5-star rating for the podcast. And as always, you can follow all the podcast and bowl season news on our website, bowlseason.com, and on social media at Bowl Season. Thanks for listening.